All right, let's just dive right into this explainer. Because if you're a parent today, you probably feel, well, completely exhausted. And if you're feeling absolutely overwhelmed by the noise, the rushing, and the sheer daily chaos of your household, hey, I want you to know right off the bat, you are definitely not alone. Today, we're going to explore how shifting our physical and emotional environment can literally change everything. We're looking at some profound insights drawn directly from traditional Japanese parenting. And what's so fascinating here is that their approach focuses not on fighting the chaos of the outside world, but on quietly building a shelter from it, right inside your own home.
Now think about the stark contrast in how a day actually begins. On one hand, we've got the typical modern morning, right? An alarm blares, a kid wakes up abruptly, they're eating breakfast with a screen propped up maybe 3 feet away, then they're rushed to the car, rushed into the school drop-off line, and pretty much rushed right through the rest of the day. Contrast that with a morning in Kyoto. A child opens her eyes naturally, no alarm. Sunlight just moves slowly across a paper screen. She listens to the birds outside, walks into the kitchen where her mother is making rice, and the morning begins in complete peaceful silence. See, we often expect our kids to be perfectly calm after a chaotic, screen-filled wake-up. But that Japanese child isn't going to melt down today simply because her world was deliberately built to protect her calm.
So here's a crucial truth we almost always miss in the West. We try so desperately to teach calm. We buy the mindfulness coloring books, we download premium meditation apps, we look at a child who is mid-meltdown and say, just take a deep breath. Even though, let's be real, they can't process a single word we're saying in that moment. Trying to teach an overwhelmed child to be calm in a loud, chaotic house is quite literally like trying to teach them to swim while holding them underwater. The lesson is totally right, but the surrounding conditions make it absolutely impossible to learn.
We really need to completely reframe how we think about this. Calm is not some magic personality trait that your child is simply born with or without. Calm is a skill, it's a practice, and most importantly, calm is an environment. Instead of adding even more chores to your already full plate, like, trying to find the perfect yoga class for toddlers or scheduling forced downtime, Japanese parents focus entirely on building an environment where calm just naturally happens. The child is calm because nothing in their physical or emotional world is actively stealing it from them.
And that brings us to our first pillar of Japanese parenting, Shitsuke. This translates to the art of quiet. But it's so important to understand that this is the presence of peace, not simply the absence of sound. It's about intentionally replacing overwhelming, constant noise with actual, restorative peace. It serves as the absolute foundation of a home where a developing nervous system can finally rest and recharge. To really get why Shitsuke matters so much, you kind of have to look at what it's fighting against every single day. Walk into most Western homes with young kids, and you will immediately notice a constant, inescapable low hum of noise that never, ever stops. The TV is left on in the living room just as background noise. Music is playing constantly in the kitchen, a tablet is pinging from the couch, washing machines are humming in the hallway, and our phones are just constantly buzzing with a never-ending stream of notifications. The child is surrounded by this incredibly dense acoustic environment that demands their brain's attention every single second of the day. And this, right here, brilliantly illustrates the core problem. When a child's brain adapts to all that constant noise, it acts exactly like a fish adapting to water. They just stop consciously noticing it. But just because they stop noticing doesn't mean their brain stops processing it. Every single background hum, every ping, every commercial break requires a tiny, microscopic fraction of their energy to filter out. By the end of the day, all those tiny fractions add up to a totally exhausted nervous system running purely on fumes. Contrast that with a purposely quiet house, a deliberately created space where the brain can actually rest and recover between activities. So that critical idea of resting between activities brings us to our second pillar. And it introduces a concept we honestly kind of fear in the West, ma. Ma translates simply to the space between things. Think of it as the necessary pause between notes in a beautiful piece of music, or the deliberate empty wall in a well-designed room. And crucially for parents feeling totally overwhelmed, it is the intentional gap between one activity ending and the next one beginning. In our modern culture, empty space completely terrifies us. We look at an empty schedule like it's a failure, so we just fill every single gap. We rush a child immediately from finishing their lunch straight into a structured activity, then we immediately hand them a screen to keep them occupied, rush them into the bath, hurry through a bedtime story, and bam, turn the lights out. We leave absolutely no room, no unstructured gap for the child to simply exist. We're terrified of them being bored. but all we're actually doing is keeping their fragile brains constantly engaged without a single meaningful break.
Listen, if you take absolutely anything away from this explainer today, let it be this. A day without space is like a meal without chewing. You can swallow everything whole, but absolutely nothing gets digested. Without that empty space, without Ma, a child's brain has zero time to digest the events, the lessons, and the heavy emotions of the day. And when those emotions build up quietly over hours without any room to settle, well, that leads directly to those massive, seemingly unexplainable afternoon meltdowns that leave everyone in tears. Okay, now we arrive at the third and final pillar, Inen. And this one shifts the focus entirely away from your kid's behavior and directly onto you, the parent. Inen means deep, bone-level emotional safety. It's the feeling of knowing, without any words needing to be spoken, that the person beside you is completely steady. We aren't talking about locked doors or physical safety gates here. It is entirely about the emotional environment that you are providing at your core.
To truly understand attuning, we've got to look at the biology of co-regulation. And here's a wild scientific truth that simply isn't talked about enough in modern parenting circles. A child's nervous system is actually not built to regulate itself. It is biologically wired to borrow calm from the nearest adult. It's not a choice, it's not optional, it is pure human biology. Your child is basically a living, breathing mirror, constantly reflecting the internal emotional state of the adult standing closest to them.
Which brings us to a somewhat harsh but ultimately empowering reality. If you're constantly scrolling your phone with tight shoulders, rushing around the kitchen, taking shallow, panicked breaths, your body is loudly broadcasting stress, and your child receives that anxiety at a frequency they simply cannot tune out. Now compare that to the Japanese mother's approach. She isn't performing calm. She isn't clenching her teeth and pretending to be relaxed. She's built a quiet, spacious day that allows her to genuinely be calm, offering her child a truly settled nervous system to borrow from. Because at the end of the day, you simply cannot give your child a peace that you don't possess yourself. So, the big question is, how on earth do we actually apply these beautiful Japanese philosophies to our incredibly loud, overwhelming modern lives? To start building this shelter for your own family, the source material offers a really simple, incredibly low-stakes challenge. For the next 7 days, you do not need to overhaul your entire life. You don't need to throw out all your screens. You only need to choose one of the following 3 subtractions. Let's look at your options so you can find the one that fits your family best. Option 1 focuses on Shitsuke. You commit to implementing exactly 1 hour of quiet per day. Just one single hour. Turn off every TV, pause every podcast, unplug the smart speakers, and put your phone completely on silent. Just let your household's nervous system crave the natural sounds of your physical home, the sound of footsteps, steady breathing, the simple click of a door. I guarantee it'll feel deeply uncomfortable and way too quiet at first, but within 3 days, the baseline volume and tension of your entire house will visibly begin to drop. Option 2 focuses on mat. For this one, you just insert 15 minutes of absolutely nothing between the end of school and whatever the next activity is. No screen time, no educational games, no chores, no instructions, just pure space. You're essentially giving your child's emotions the physical and mental room they need to breathe, to settle down, and to properly digest the day's input. Watch closely how simply adding 15 minutes of empty space can cause those terrible, super predictable afternoon meltdowns to just naturally fade away.
And option 3 focuses on Anon. This one is entirely for you. Find just 5 minutes of genuine adult stillness each day. Remember, don't pretend to be calm. Actually do absolutely nothing. Have nothing in your hands, no phone to check, and make sure absolutely nothing is being asked of you. Just sit still and breathe. These 5 minutes will completely reset the emotional broadcast your body is sending out into your home, and your child will hear that new, steady, safe signal before you even say a single word to them. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a really simple, powerful image. The modern world is incredibly loud, and the wind of chaos will always blow. It constantly demands our attention, it drains our daily energy. But your job as a parent isn't to somehow step outside and stop the wind. That's completely impossible. Your job is simply to build the lantern around your child's calm, to consciously protect it with quiet, with deliberate space, and with your own settled, steady presence. You can't magically hand your child a perfectly calm personality. But by slowing down and intentionally choosing just one of these practices this week, 1 hour of quiet, 15 minutes of empty space, or 5 minutes of true stillness, you can actually show them what calm looks and feels like. The noise of the outside world isn't going away anytime soon, which leaves us with one big question.
What incredible changes will you see in your own home when you finally decide to let the quiet in?